Prophet Marcello Kearns back at it. So this video is going to be about the Telepath network that they got using against God's people as spies. The telepathic network that they using against God's people as spies. Okay, so they using telepaths, mind readers. It's time for Christians to get up to date with understanding spirituality that's real. Spirituality is not just on God's side, and spirituality is not just on their side. It works both ways. They didn't believe in our spirituality until I came along. For a lot of people, they didn't believe in our spirituality, which means they didn't believe Christians had spiritual power. Not to authorize it and have authority with it and have direction with it and be directional with the power. They didn't know we could do that. And that's why they thought they was going to try me, and then, it'll be just left up to God. And they seen that God's people have authority. Authority in this context means God has given me authority to say yes or no on people's lives. Now, see, if you ain't on that level, listen, I want you to know one of the descriptions of the highest levels of being a high-ranking Christian, a high-ranking spiritual warrior, is God gives you authority to say yes and no on some people's life. And see, that level of spirituality, a lot of people don't have, but it's time to talk about it. It's time to honestly talk about it, because a lot of people don't talk about it because not just because they don't have it, because they think it's prideful. But I'm just describing things. I'm just describing levels. You follow me, right? I'm describing levels. So how long we gonna be humble to where the humility that we mold stops us from describing the higher levels of spirituality on God's side. God gives his people power, and I can show you in the Bible over and over again where God gave his people authority. And with that authority, they was able to say, they gotta go. It wasn't that God made the ultimate decision, but the authority displayed, and that's in those situations, the initial authority was the authority that God gave his people. See, in American Christianity, you won't find people that would talk like this, because they feel like you being prideful, and they feel like God doesn't give authority like that to his people. Yes, he do. When you start getting high ranking, you start getting authority where you got yay and nay on people's life when they play with you. But you can't just waltz on those levels. You gotta earn that. You gotta fast. You gotta get in God's presence. You gotta seek the Lord for hours and hours. You gotta pray in the Holy Ghost. You have to give offerings. Those three things: get in God's presence with hours and hours of worship, hours and hours of praise, giving offerings, and fasting. for more than 3 days. See, the American Christian church, they just fast for 3 days. The average Christian in America just fast for 3 days. You got to go beyond 3 days. You got to go beyond 3 days. You got to go beyond 3 days to really. And then the funny thing is, around the third and the fourth day, I notice all the time is when things pop. And it's like that's when many American Christians stop at the 3rd day mark. But when you surpass the 3rd day mark, that's when things start actually happening. That's a pattern that I noticed. And I'm going to be talking about that too in other videos. You know, capturing spiritual patterns and understanding spiritual patterns as from your experiences. You start to see certain patterns in spirituality. You know, and where you begin to now be able to give spiritual recipes because you've seen patterns of what, if you do this X amount of time, this is what's going to happen. You track that over time, you basically now can form spiritual recipes. I form spiritual recipes. And that's what my enemies don't know, is that I learned to form spiritual recipes. You know, I don't work witchcraft. I don't work hoodoo, voodoo, Santeria, Brujeria, Wicca. I don't work any pagan witchcraft. I don't work any of that. I work spiritual recipes on God's side. And I learned with time, spiritual recipes is what the Christians in America is missing. So they hit and miss with the victory. They hit and miss with defeating their enemies. See, when you got witchcraft standoffs, well, they standing off with you with witchcraft. You got to use spiritual recipes to get rid of that. You got to get spiritual. You got to do spiritual recipes to command your respect. I command respect from witches and warlocks. That's what level I'm on. I command respect. Because you ain't gonna play with me with witchcraft and for free. Not for free. It's gonna cost you something playing with me. And you may have never had it cost you something before, and now it's gonna cost you something this time around. So, spiritual recipes is when you have X amount of this and X amount of that. You got various different types of spiritual recipes where you might fast for 3 days and then you give an offering. You might fast for 7 days and give a smaller offering. You might give a bigger offering and fast for 3 days or 1 day. And your main ingredients is not going to be a million different ingredients, if you will. You're going to have fasting, offerings, and spending time in God's presence. Those going to be the 3 spiritual recipes. And getting God's word and living out God's word. That's going to be the foundation for your spiritual recipes, because it won't work if you ain't living out God's word. But we can be super intentional, more super intentional than witches and warlocks when we use spirituality. You just got to have the right teachers. You got to have the right people that teach you. But see, the reason why American Christianity never taught spiritual recipes is because in American perspective and worldviews, that's almost borderline witchcraft. But it's not. It's not. It's not spiritual. It's not witchcraft. You know what I'm saying? You got to use spiritual recipes in order to break this witchcraft, to break these telepaths, to break the telepathic networks, to destroy that. You got to use spiritual recipes, and you got to be consistent with spiritual recipes. If you don't cut corners, I can show you what you must do in order to defeat these witches and warlocks and these telepaths. But you can't cut corners, which means you got to expand your soul and start fasting more than 3 days. That's the first thing with spiritual recipes and one-on-one on the higher levels of rank in God's kingdom. You got to expand your soul, expand your physical capacity to be able to fast for more than 3 days. 3 days, listen, I used to do that when I was in my 20s. I used to fast 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days. That's what most American Christians are going to do. I used to do 3-day fasts in my 20s. By the time I got into my late 30s, in my late 30s, I started doing 7-day fasts. Fasting for a whole week. Like right now, I say humbly, I'm on a 7-day fast right now. But see, that's just how active I am. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it goes without saying. It's part of your lifestyle. But one thing I will incorporate that American Christians didn't incorporate with fasting, you must, especially with fasts that are over 3 days, 3 days or better, you must go educate yourself on the refeeding syndrome. Refeeding syndrome is complications from eating the wrong things after a fast. Refeeding syndrome is complications after eating the wrong things after extended fast. And it can happen on a 1-day fast. Recently, for me, it happened on a 1-day fast, which now I will update my experiences to tell you that even if it's a 1-day fast, proceed with caution. But specifically, if you fast water and food for 1 day, like when I do 1 day, I make it count. So I do a supernatural fast. A supernatural fast is no food and no water. But you can only go without water for 3 days, 3 to 7 days. Some would say 3 days, 3 or 4 or 5 days, somewhere around in there. 3 to 5 days. You can't go without water. But when I'm only doing 1 day, I'll do a supernatural fast of no food and no water. In the Bible, Esther, she did a 3-day supernatural fast. No food, no water. Queen Esther did no food, no water for 3 days. I only do a supernatural fast for 1 day. So if I just do 1 day, I make it count. So I do a supernatural fast. Now, with any days of one supernatural fast, even 1 day, it can give you refeeding syndrome if you just eat regularly. Now, if you do a total fast with water for 1 day, you don't have any complications when you come back. But I noticed when I did a supernatural fast with no food, no water for 1 day, the pressure of that on my body is more laborious than when I drink water on a 1 day fast. On a 1 day fast, if you do a supernatural fast, you're going to have to do, I recommend doing a refeeding process, which is half the time of your fast. So if you fast for 2 days, you have to refeed for 1 day. If you fast for 1 day, you have to refeed for 12 hours, half a day. If you fast for 7 days, you have to refeed for 3.5 days. That's the science of it. It's a science. It's a literal science, and you can't buck the system. You can't say, "Oh, I feel good." You're gonna always feel good, but your body can't process the food yet until that science, those mathematics take place. When you fast, when you refeed, eating soups, soft food, and not taking in a lot of salt, and not taking in a lot of sugar, and not taking in a lot of big portions. That's basically how you refeed. That's going to help you proceed carefully out of a fast. I always tell the story of the man who ate KFC after his fast, and he died. He ate KFC and died. He went on a fast. This is here in America, I'm guessing. He went on a fast, and then when he came off the fast, I don't know how many days he fasted, but I'm guessing probably around 3 to 7 days. Maybe even 14 to 20 days, somewhere maybe around in there. Probably from 3 to 20 days, somewhere around in there. But they don't tell you, at least I didn't see how many days he fasted. But whatever the case may be, when he came off the fast, he ate KFC. He was tempted with that good food. You know how KFC smell. He was tempted with that smell, that food, that chicken. He died, man. He died. That dude's in the grave right now from not refeeding properly. See, this is what makes me question the old school, because how can you refeed? How can you not refeed and you fast all these days? And I don't hear no Christians talking about it. No Christians don't talk about it. In America, I've never heard one preacher in my life in America talk about the refeeding process after fasting. You have to do it. You have to do it. You can't just eat pizza after 3 days. It'll mess you up. You could die. You can't just go eat a greasy burger after a 3-day fast. Or chicken, you would die, bro. Because your body is clean. Your stomach is clean. You know, and you can't, and your stomach is small. It has to adjust back to eating food again. So, like, I teach properly. When you fast, you have to do the refeeding process. This is very important. This is a matter of life and death. Fasting is not a game. If you really look at the context of it, you could tell it's not a game, because you're not eating. You're not eating food. It's not a game. You know, it's not for people that think it's a play thing and try to trivialize it. You know, my enemies, they'll sit back and say, "Oh, he on another fast." Oh, that's what they do. This is gonna go full circle back to my message. Oh yeah, he on a fast. The telepaths, the mind readers, gonna tell everybody in the culture, in the community, that I'm on a fast. But it's not no Walt Disney game. It's a matter of life and death. It's a serious activity. The biggest fast I went on, it was with just drinking water, no vitamins, no snacks, nothing. Was a 21-day water fast, 3 weeks. And to this day, I'm still proud of myself for being able to nurse myself back to health. That it was a medical condition when your body is like that, and I nursed myself. You follow me? I nursed myself back to health. You know, and I'm proud of that still to this day. I nursed myself back to health after 3 weeks of no food at all. That's why I know what I'm doing. You know, once you go up that high and you survive, you know, now you're one of the expert fasters. You're one of the experts in spiritual warfare. You know, some people scared of that. People scared to fast on those levels. Because once I got up there, I'm like, ooh, boy, I'm all the way up here, boy. You can't come down. Once you up there, let's put it like this. You can't ignore the heights that you at. When you up that high on a 21-day fast, you can't deny the heights that you're at. You can't just come back down to normal or ignore how high you are. You realize, I got to do this right. I got to come out of this fast right. I can't make no mistakes. So I wind up refeeding for 11 days. I refed for 11 days, which means I ate nothing but soup, beans, Ensures. But Ensures, any vitamin like shakes like that, I recommend doing that to get your vitamins back. But not the first day. The whole first day you can't do it. Doing a 21-day fast. So I took in basically broth, for like a couple days, like the first day. And then I had beans like the second day, but smushed down, mushy, not hard beans. And I successfully, after 11 days, refed, and then where I could eat regular food after 3 weeks of eating no food. So that's no lie, that's real, that's truth, and that's what level I'm on. See, the higher you go, well, that's the level you on. The last place you left off is where you at. So they don't know they dealing with, in spiritual warfare, these telepaths, you're dealing with somebody that's on the level of 3 weeks of fasting. That's what you're dealing with. That's what America's dealing with. You're dealing with somebody that fasts for 3 weeks. You think God is going to look at his servant fast for 3 weeks and the labor that he has to do that, he or she has to do that, and you think he's going to let you play with me? When he see me labor like that in the spiritual world? See, there are people that labor in spiritual labor. I labor spiritually. I work for God. I do spiritual labor. You think God gonna let you play with me for free? It's not gonna happen, buddy. I went on a 3-week fast. 3 weeks. So now you see what level I'm on. I show people spiritual recipes, what you can do to really defeat these devils, to really defeat these people. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not gonna go too long on that. I might have to do part 2 on this, but I think that information what I shared just now was very important. You know what I'm saying? Look up refeeding process. Google refeeding process after a fast, and it'll tell you all the information you need to know. I never, like I said, in my life, I never heard one preacher, not even the ones I respect, ever say anything about the refeeding process, but they'll talk about fasting. See, when you don't talk about the refeeding process, people that's zealous like me, I'm just a person that's zealous about whatever I'm passionate about. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I wind up even going that far. Where I'm doing 3-week fast, 7-day fast. I want to do a whole month. I want to do 40 days eventually. But I feel like I gotta have a better atmosphere. I gotta have a way better atmosphere than the atmosphere I got right now. If I had like a really quiet, nice atmosphere where there's no gang stalkers and no secret society bums and all of them type of people, I feel like I could do a 30-day fast or a 40-day fast. But I need the right environment to get to those levels and peaks. You know what I'm saying? So because the spiritual warfare with the fast is a labor. It's an extra labor. And you gotta weigh, you gotta fill out your environments as far as spiritual warfare. Is it the time for you to fast that long with this stuff that's going on and the stuff that's around you? You know what I'm saying? You gotta pay attention. You might use a different strategy of, I'll fast this much, and then I'll come back and I'll fast again. I'll fast again right here, and then I'll come back and fast again. So you're still really getting it in. You're just breaking it up instead of one big extended fast. See, when you by yourself in your own apartment. See, when I did that 21-day fast, I was in my own apartment. I did it with ease. You know, I'm living by myself in my own apartment. No disturbance. Take me a shower, lay back down, lay in the bed. There was no disturbance. You know, that's the best environment for those extended fasts, more than a week. You know, like I said, I'm on a 7-day fast right now. I already got food that I can eat to come off this fast carefully. You know what I'm saying? I already got food I can eat. So today I'm gonna be halfway through this fast. I mean, by 5 o'clock this afternoon, I'm gonna be 5:31 p.m. I'm gonna be halfway through. So I'm doing very good. I'm halfway through already. You know, but take heed to that information. You know what I'm saying? Take heed to that information. Refeeding process is very important, even if you fast one day, especially if you don't eat no food and you don't drink no water. You have to refeed in that case with no food and no water for one day, or anytime you do no food and no water, you have to do the refeeding process, which is half the time that you actually fasted. So if you fast for 2 days, you got to do a full day of refeeding, eating soft foods, liquids, broths, things like that. No fried food whatsoever. Can't eat that. Okay? This is important information because, like I said, you can go look up all these American preachers and they never talked about refeeding process. And that's just when I realized this, I was amazed. I almost felt betrayed. Like, man, they was talking about fasting, but then some people, like I said, might be zealous and just think, well, once they hear the topic, they gonna do their own thing. They gonna do their own type of fast. You got zealous people like me. I hear the topic of a preacher talking about it, I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna do a 10-day fast. Not realizing this preacher ain't tell me about refeeding. I just went into the fasting without being taught properly. See, you gotta teach because of zealous people. Zealous people gonna do more than everybody else. So when you talk about fasting, you can't assume this person knows about refeeding. You have to assume that there's gonna be zealous people that just fast more than what I'm even talking about. Well, they fast for like 10 days. But so you just hearing the subject, they gonna fast for 10 days. Just hearing a preacher talk about it is zealous people that's gonna fast for 10 days. But that preacher didn't teach them all the way about spiritual fasting, where you have to refeed after a 10-day fast. I've done a 10-day fast, I've done a 12-day fast, I've done a 14-day fast, 9-day fast, I've done all combinations. And you gotta refeed. God, as soon as I went to the next level of 10 days, that's when God began to sit me down, because now I was going to the next level. And God is always good for that. That's why I love him. He always will sit you down and say, okay, this is what you need to know. After when I set my mind to do my first 10-day fast in 2023. Yeah. God set me down. It was 2023 or 2024. I think it was 2023. God set me down and showed me the information. Other than that, I would have just did the 10-day fast and probably had some complications and probably had to wind up in the ER. But God set me down and showed me about the refeeding process, and that just changed my life. Now, as far as fasting, now I can soar and do 3 weeks of fasting with no complications. Every once in a while, you can underestimate when you're on the higher levels, the lower levels of fasting, which is like 3 days and under. That's what it wind up getting you with the refeeding syndrome, because you underestimate, because you fast more all the time, so you underestimate it. You know what I'm saying? And basically, that's how it gets you. That's how you got the refeeding syndrome, because you underestimated it. With refeeding syndrome, it's because you either ate too much sugar, too much salt, no pepper. You can't have no pepper after the fast. For like until, I would say, the duration of the refeeding process. After you back to normal food, you can have pepper. No vinegar, no spicy stuff. The portion too, you can't have big portions. You eat every 3 hours. Every 3 hours. And the texture of the food is also what can cause refeeding syndrome, where you eat hard food and your stomach can't break it down. So no salt, no high levels of salt, no high levels of sugar, no big portions, and no hard textures of food. Those 4 do's and don'ts is what will keep you from having the refeeding syndrome after extended fastings. So you see, I'm really about that life, bro. You know what I'm saying? Maybe this message, I believe this message was for someone that maybe you getting a little more serious about fasting. You know what I'm saying? And this message is for you. I didn't even really mean to talk about it, but I kind of got into it, so that must have been meant for somebody, you know what I'm saying, to possibly keep you out the danger zone when you want to do extended fastings. You know what I'm saying? Those things are essential, vital. They're vital. I'm gonna make part 2 about this, but I'm gonna just touch on it right here, because this is really my message. The psychic network and the telepathic network is the spies for the Americans. They using them to spy on our mind. Okay, that's why I want to take my time and really do a video about this, because it's really important to understand this. It's a little more sophisticated than what might meet the eye. If you don't know about, like, this is where I went on the rabbit trail initially. If you don't know about high levels of spirituality, ask God to lead you. You know what I'm saying? Well, understanding spirituality, because it's spiritual people on our side and the spiritual people on their side. Okay? And one doubts the other. I've heard Christians say they don't even believe in witchcraft. And I know these people that work witchcraft think they're more spiritual than us. They think they're more spiritually powerful than us, until they meet prophets, until they meet people that really is about that life. And they find out the hard way. They mess around and find out that we can get in the trenches, the spiritual trenches, and go to war, and you're not going to win. Okay, so on their side, they got the mind readers. They got the wizards. The wizards is the people that can throw stuff at your mind. That's not necessarily one and the same with a telepath or a mind reader. It's not one and the same. They can throw thoughts at your mind and images at your mind. You know what I'm saying? That's a wizard. That's what we call wizards. You know, Wizard, the term wizard is in the Bible too. You can go look it up. See, it's a lot of people in American culture, Christianity, that will say they don't believe in witchcraft and psychics, but it's all in the Bible. They're just mistaught by certain Christians, or they just choose not to believe. But how you understand this whole spiritual world is that God made everybody, every human being is spiritual. Every human being has a certain level of spirituality. Just from being a soul, you have some type of spirituality. You know what I'm saying? You have to. And how you express your soul is going to be how your spirituality is expressed as well. How you express your soul is basically the compass to your spirituality. So if you have a person that's an alcoholic, they're gonna have spiritual demons that match the characteristics of that spirit of alcoholism, right? And so you have to understand that every person is going to express spirituality. They have spirituality. When you understand this, you don't think that this person is not spiritual. Every person is spiritual because they have a soul. They're going to express themselves, and that's how their spirituality is going to come out and be expressed, if that makes sense. Okay? Now, when someone is aware of God or aware of Satan or demonic spirits or witchcraft, that's when they're connecting to the sources of spirituality. But if they don't connect to those sources, they still have levels of spirituality. Everybody do. Sometimes people just are doing, they got hit and miss kind of spirituality where they do stuff and it actually works. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about as far as witchcraft. Black people know what I'm talking about. A lot of folklore, a lot of things handed down from different generations of family, and it's basically witchcraft. So I have to say that so you don't doubt spirituality. So you don't think when I'm talking about mind readers and these psychics, American informality would call it a psychic. But technically it's a mind reader, which is a telepath. And a psychic and a telepath is not even one and the same. What we're dealing with is a whole network of telepaths, mind readers who can read your mind and read your every thought. And so if you're a high-ranking Christian, they already done put them around you. They already done put a whole network of mind readers all throughout the infrastructure of our society, which means they work at stores, they drive trains, they train conductors, they're police, firemen. They constructed a whole telepathic infrastructure against Christians, against high-ranking Christians and spiritual people, where they can move according to the infrastructure of a community telepathic wise. So they can follow you with the infrastructure of wherever you go on a day-to-day basis with the society as telepaths, reading your mind all along the way. So if you go to the store, they got telepaths there. At the grocery store, they're going to read your mind there. You walk around, they got telepathic police. They're going to be reading your mind while you out here in the field. You go to a hospital, you're going to have telepathic nurses. And they all are connected to the same networks, which means if you are a high-ranking target, the telepaths are going to follow you through your day from the hospital to the grocery store. And they're going to contact and communicate with each other as telepaths on their phones, or basically, or with each other, because a cell phone text goes through these wires that goes from city to city, from state to state. It's a whole wiring that makes that communication go that far. It's the same thing with telepaths. They can communicate along a wiring like a text to communicate. So when you go from the grocery store, they know you're going to the hospital. They already read your mind. You're going to go to the hospital, get a checkup, or you're going to go to the hospital and do something. They already read your mind. That's why when you go there, it's a setup. It's staged. It feels staged. Your intuition going to tell you it feels staged. The reason why it feels staged, because the telepaths read your mind before you got there. And they went before you, in front of you, and staged a game stalking event, that's what I call it, to beat you before you got there, and to set up an attack before you got there. So I'm gonna do part 2 on this, man. I'm gonna do part 2. I'm coming back on part 2.